Hi, I'm David Morrell, and I'm here with Gayle Lynds. Back in 2004, Gayle and I at the VoucherCon conference in Toronto were with a group, a small group, as Gayle will explain, that began ITW. And many years later, here we are in a changing world, introducing a virtual ITW Thriller Fest. We welcome you, and briefly we'd like to reminisce about ITW and Thriller Fest and what it means to us, and we believe to you as well.
Thank you, David. It's so exciting to be here and part of this. I cannot believe how many years have gone by, and this is our 15th Thriller Fest. One of my most fond memories was how quickly the idea took hold among thriller writers. I love, there was one moment was chatting with Vince Flynn trying to get him to join, and I said, well, you know, thriller writers don't join. And that was it. That's what he needed to hear. He said, yes, I never join anything. And then, of course, he became a founding member. That was a sweet memory. And we did it so quickly. And it's just the time was right, I guess.
Well, that's funny how I remember it slightly differently, because I remember the year of phone calls that you and I were making to various people to basically create an organization which required bylaws, which required legal assistance, and
Yes.
this is a good time to remember fondly. It's not that he's passed, but to remember fondly David Dunn's contribution
Yes.
to ITW. Without David Dunn, nothing would have happened. And why don't you tell them a little bit about David and his contribution?
That they were huge, of course, because he was an attorney and he knew how to do the bylaws. We had bylaws within 1 month. We had a website within 1 month. Within 6 months, we had membership with selling books, over 1 billion books around the world. 6 months. And of course, there were people who said to both David and me, I'm sure you remember, we don't need any more author organizations. We have enough. But that just, to me, expressed the desire for this particular kind of collegiality and support. It was a wonderful, yes, we worked our butts off. I didn't write a book. You didn't write a book.
Yeah,
We
I
worked
certainly
very,
this was
very
a
hard.
book.
Pardon?
Certainly, as you say, the amount of time it took to get us functional was certainly one book that I didn't write.
Yes. But at the same time, when I look at other things that get started, if the time is right and the people are open to it, then things kind of went smoothly. I also have a fond memory of a certain author whom you probably remember who wouldn't join because years before somebody at one of his publishers had wanted to put the word thriller on his cover. And he had made such a fuss that he couldn't, he said, as long as, if you will take the word thriller out of your organization title,
Right.
I will join.
Well, certainly, it's the International Blank Writers Conference. Well,
and I remember a bookstore seller was big, who was a major force in writers' conferences, says you have to take 3 years to create your first convention. We didn't have the time. We did it in 1.5 years. And that was fabulous. Wasn't that fun?
Well, we had a lot of help. I'm thinking of, for example, with new publicity ideas, MJ Rose was very helpful.
Enormously helpful.
Enormously helpful. And the list after that would be considerably Tess Gerritsen, who was an outside major author who said, sure, use my name to help. I'll be on the board and use my name to further the organization. So Tess was a big help as well. And after that, the list goes on. I know there are people that we don't have time to mention, but they know their contribution, and we do as well.
And Jim Patterson agreed to be the editor of the first thriller anthology,
yes,
which was huge. The way people pitched in all up and down the line. I'm thinking of Jim Rollins, I'm thinking of Steve Berry, Joe Finder, Lee Child was on that first board, remember? MJ was on that first board. and everybody worked hard because we had no paid staff, and you and I were paying for bills out of our own pocket there.
We were, and Kathy was.
Oh yes, Kathy Antrim and Diane Boat, who's now Diane.
Yeah, we're getting them in. I don't want anybody to feel left out. I have great affection
Gratitude.
for everybody.
Yeah.
But let's go. Let's think about BoucherCon Toronto 2004. How many were there?
34.
34. Yes, and I remember the controversy about. It seemed as if we were trying to infringe upon other groups when in fact we were simply trying to be inclusive because if people who wrote thrillers weren't I knew in my heart as the author of First Blood and as the author of Brotherhood of the Rose that I was not a mystery writer. So I mean, as we define it traditionally, for me at least, I was helping to create along with you and many other people, an organization that I felt would include me. So anyway, those 34 people met in Toronto. And do you have any memories of that meeting?
Yes, we were so few of us that we sat in a big circle. Remember
Yes.
that? And I remember David Dunn I had been drinking with the night before without realizing.
Shocking.
that he was this attorney who could just do things that you and we were simply not educated to do. He just jumped in and he kept shaking his head. I cannot believe I'm agreeing to do this. Well, he wasn't agreeing. He was volunteering. And everybody, there was a unanimous vote to form an organization. And then when we somehow you and I got nominated to be co-presidents, and then you did tell them what you did that really got us in hot water.
I don't remember what I did. I don't want to remember it, perhaps.
You nodded.
Oh, yes. Well, what had happened was I believe it was Joe Finder who was walking in the room over here to the corner, and I sort of went like that to him, and then I looked back at you, and everybody was looking at me, and I suddenly realized there'd been a vote while I was looking at Joe that said you and I were co-presidents. That was not our intention, but that happens. But if we leap forward, if you go back to 2004 and look at national bestseller lists, thrillers almost never were on them.
That's right.
With the exception of Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code, because that came out in 2003.
Now, see, what I remember is there were a lot of thrillers on the bestseller list, but thrillers were not nominated for awards, and not really since John Le Carre and Forsyth and the earlier group who wrote thrillers. They just were not being nominated. And there were an awful lot of great books like yours and Dare I Hope Mine. And all these people who joined ITW, they were not receiving the kind of notice for outstanding work that we had hoped to find. And that was one of the issues that was voted on. We asked them, what do you want? And number one, they wanted the organization. Number two, they wanted awards.
Huh. Interesting. I know the New York Times during that period did not tend to review thrillers.
Exactly.
And now they actually have a monthly, 2-monthly, whatever column in which they talk about thrillers. So it helped to get attention. My recollection of the purpose that's in the bylaws is twofold: to provide a community so that thriller writers, that too could learn from each other and be better. And secondly, to promote a sense of thrillers in the reading public, not just to make aware of them, but also to make readers aware of what thrillers could be and how they so often reflect what's going on in the world.
Yes, they highly reflect that. And another thing that I remember from that era was, as you may remember, I was married to David I was married to Dennis Lynds, who was an Edgar winning
Yes.
detective novelist.
Fine writer, fine man.
He was a really wonderful man and writer. And so he could write terrific detective novels, terrific mysteries. And he kept trying to convince me to do that. And I couldn't, my brain didn't work that way. But he could not write a thriller to save his soul. He didn't understand them. So I was isolated. I had no classes to go to. I'm addressing your point. I had nothing like the richness that Thriller Fest offers. Thriller Fest, and perhaps I'd appreciate your take, to me is like the embodiment of, I would have given so much to have an opportunity like Thriller Fest to go to when I was teaching myself to write.
I too taught myself. We were of a generation where there were no writers' conferences, and then about the 90s, writers' conferences started to exist, but they weren't specialized enough. And let's face it, there are in some quarters a prejudice against genres, whereas I embrace them. I think I finally realized that what I did do in my career is investigate genres, and that one thing I'm very pleased about with our ITW is that we have helped people earn a living. That we have, through making agents available, teaching people how to do pitch sessions, making established writers give talks about how writing happens, that people over the years who have come to these sessions and had the opportunity to actually speak to agents. I never had that chance, and that at least the conference, which alas this year is virtual. It didn't I'm stumbling all over myself. Provided the opportunity for this magic kind of person and agent. Oh my God, I can actually. They welcome me speaking to them.
Well, see, that I find that beautifully said, because that's really...
Even though I stumbled all over myself to say it, I'm a writer after all.
Yeah,
get the revision going.
We sit in our rooms alone and contemplate the meaning of life. I think, I'm maybe wrong about the numbers, but I believe there are close to 200 authors who are giving craft talks that are free to people who sign up for just one of the major sessions, like Mega Craft Fest or Mega Career Fest. And these short snippets, they're like 20 minutes each, are just incalculable in terms of value for the lessons that we have gathered over the years of writing and being able to engage readers and having content. Most people don't realize the importance of content in these books. We do not write cartoons.
No, done properly, our books reflect what's happening in the world and helps us understand the world better. I lost a thought. I had a thought that you reminded me of. But anyway, keep talking and it'll come.
I think that, honestly, we were all so bowled over by the pandemic, of course. And then the thought of lose for you and me, because for various reasons you and I were not able to attend last year, and not being able to go again this year was really sort of heartbreaking. And then when Kim Howe and Liz Berry and the whole group of the current people who are running ITW and Thriller Fest came up with this absolutely knock your socks off virtual conference, it just makes me so happy. And I just want to say one word, and you will recognize this word, because this was at the heart of everything we did in the beginning. And I think was one of the reasons we gave a successful launch for today's group to take over, and that is the word innovation. Yes. We were always innovative, and we always made a decision ahead of time before we started something. If we felt there was a chance that it wasn't going to work, we didn't do it. We only looked for cutting edge and innovative. And to my best of my knowledge, and I do stay in touch, Thriller Fest, virtual Thriller Fest, is knock them out of the park. It's bigger, it's better. It has more information, more opportunities for those attending to interact. and it's a bargain. It
And
really is inexpensive.
and my thought came to me,
Good.
which is that making, virtue of necessity, and as you say, this is a wildly innovative way to approach the fact that we cannot have Thriller-Fest this year, so why not have a virtual one? These sessions, for the first time, are video recorded. So we now have a library, a permanent library, as opposed to year to year to year. Yes, they have been audio recorded in the past, and they are still available. But there is something about seeing the person who's speaking, and we now have a library of visuals. I know. In my case, I did a half-hour conversation with Walter Mosley that in a way replicates my conversation with him on stage a few years ago for Thriller Fest. And that's just at least one example for me of something that has now been recorded and is available.
I know. I did one. Mine was with Lisa Black, who is this amazing up-and-coming forensics writer. You don't, at least, I love what Flannery O'Connor said. I don't know what I think until I write it. And in a way, these conversations, because they're not scripted, they're spontaneous. A lot of the times, I think we say things and realize things as writers in our field by these interviews that we do with each other that are kind of important and wonderful for an audience to hear, and to have it recorded, as you say. Isn't it wonderful?
It's far out and wild, as John Denver would say.
Yeah.
So we're providing an introduction for this year. So I wonder if you think of anything else that we need to say as we leave, and encourage people to visit all these wonderful conversations and presentations that they have access to.
I'm wishing you so much fun, my friends, here at the conference this year. I know you're going to learn a lot, and you're going to meet each other, and you're going to have a lot of smiles on your face and make a lot of notes.
Same here. Good day to everybody.
Bye-bye.